Hey guys, um, for whatever reason, I feel led to do a video today. I was doing my Bible study last night and I just ran across some things that really resonated with me, and I felt like the Lord wanted me to share um, my experience with this particular situation or subject. And that subject is similar to what I did a previous video on about anxiety and worry and fear. Um, I I'll just be completely honest. I struggle with it. All three. Um, Not like I used to. There has definitely been some changes, and God has definitely delivered me from a lot of it. But I still wrestle with it. As long as we're on this earth and in these bodies, we're gonna struggle with things, and fear and anxiety and worry are my struggles. Um, but I wanted to talk to you about it today because I know that I wasn't always this way. There was this very specific event in my life that caused this to really take hold of me. Um, and I just wanted to talk about that. I want to talk about how what I've learned through it all, and how I know that moving forward, that God is always going to be there in my difficult moments, because He has shown me on numerous occasions, too many to count, that some of my greatest fears and some of the moments that I was most fearful of, He was right there in the midst of them. So I want to tell you a little bit about that. I hope it's not going to be too long of a video, but I tend to just ramble a little bit, but also I want to make sure I cover everything. So I'm going to start from where my first encounter with real fear was. And that was about 15 years ago. Prior to that, I don't recall having fear and anxiety. I never worried about really anything. But about 15 years ago, my son at the time was 16 months old, and he got very sick. And what we took him to the doctor, and what he was diagnosed with was strep throat, which he had been diagnosed with strep, in the past, and we take the antibiotics, everything's fine. Well, that wasn't the case this time. But 3 days after he was diagnosed with strep and he had started his antibiotics, um, he was back in his playroom playing while I was cooking dinner. And I went back to check on him, and he was, I'll never forget it. It's seared into my memory. He was unconscious on the floor, in a very distorted position. Um, not to be too gross, but he had white foam coming out of his mouth. And these details are just part of the fear where this all comes from. So I pick him up and I'm running into the living room screaming, "Call 911," because I thought he had passed away. Well, ambulance gets there and he is breathing, and which I knew that before the ambulance got there because they had me check, just for his breathing and everything, but he was unconscious. So we end up getting to the hospital, and he was suffering from seizures, and he had never had a seizure before. So, just to make a very long story short, because this was a very long, very scary process, because he was unconscious for almost 24 hours. But turned out he actually had meningitis. I don't know how he got meningitis, but it was viral meningitis. So it was not the worst kind that you can get, but it was definitely scary. He was in the hospital for over a week. And that began my struggle with fear, anxiety, and worry, usually around health related things. If someone would get sick, I would always jump to worst case scenario because that's what I saw was the worst case scenario of my son being sick. I mean, it went from strep throat to meningitis, and as a mom, I felt like I should have done more. There should have been signs that I'd seen that were different, but I didn't know. So anyway, that's where it began. So for the past 15 years, I have dealt with worry and panic and fear around medical things. And I've been struggling with it, and through a lot of prayer and counseling, which was diagnosed as post-traumatic stress disorder, I feel like I have gotten a lot farther than I used to be. But I want to this is something that happened to me last year that God used in a mighty way to show me how He is there in the midst of the fears. November of 2016, I had to have a breast surgery because my mammogram showed what they believed to be cancer. Immediately, I had the panic, the fear that I was going to die, what was going to happen. My mom had just recently went through ovarian cancer, so I watched that, and that was horrific. And so I had a lot of fear around it, and I was actually paralyzed. I mean, completely paralyzed with fear. I remember going to the pastor and telling him that I couldn't even pray. I could not pray. I was frozen. I mean, I didn't have words to say. It was hard. But I want to get straight to the moment that I feared the most. And it wasn't the surgery, because I knew I would be asleep for the surgery. If you've ever had breast surgery and you have had a tumor in your breast, you will probably know what I'm talking about. But prior to your surgery, the day of, I had to go and have a wire inserted into the tumor so that the surgeon would be able to follow that wire down to get the tumor, because my tumor was basically at my chest wall. It was very, very deep. Well, I was so scared about that procedure because I know they said they would numb me and everything, but the thought of them sticking a wire it's longer than sticking that into my breast and me having to then leave that breast center and go to the hospital with this wire, I was just petrified. So we get there, and it's me and my husband, and it was really early in the morning because I had to go before my surgery, so I think it was about 6:30, and there's nobody in the waiting room at the breast center, where you sign in. So I sign in, and I get called back very quickly to another waiting area. And when I get back there to that waiting area, there's a lady that is sitting several seats down, and I didn't say anything to her. I didn't even say hello. I was so scared. I was just in prayer and just kind of frozen there, just terrified. And she looks down to me and she says, "I just want to let you know that Jesus is in front of you and his angels are all around you." And I looked at her, and tears just started flowing down my face. And she said, "Don't be afraid. Jesus wants me to tell you that whatever you're about to face, He's going to hold your hand and will be with you through the whole thing. And I just started to bawl, and I may now, because she didn't know what I was there for. I hadn't talked to her. And shortly after that, probably within a minute, they called her back to the area where they do the mammograms and ultrasounds. And she got up and she said, "God bless you." She went back. Well, I was sitting there, still in tears with my head down, just in awe of what she had said. And I wasn't even looking up, but I heard somebody come in my direction. And I glanced up, and there was this elderly lady standing in front of me. She was in a gown, like you put on when you go to have your mammogram. She was in a gown, and she stopped right in front of me. And she said, "Honey, can I pray for you?" Out of nowhere. Again, I hadn't seen her before. She didn't know why I was there. For all she knew, I was there for a regular mammogram. But she just stopped and she said, "Can I pray with you?" And I looked at her and I said, "Yes." And so she leans down and she puts her head right here and her arms kind of around my shoulders, and she prays the most powerful prayer. And in her prayer, every single fear that I had about going into this and the outcome, she prayed those specifics over me. And when she got done, she just looked at me and she said, "Jesus is going to take care of you." And I was bawling. I couldn't even talk. And I did manage to get out, "Thank you." She walked away. She walked around the corner back where the lockers are and the dressing area to get dressed. I sat there for probably another 30 minutes waiting to get called back. The lady that walked back behind there to get dressed, that had just prayed for me, never came back out. And there was not an exit on the other side. The lady who had went back in the very beginning, she never came back out of the mammogram room. I never saw either one of those ladies again. And when I finally got called back, I was looking around in the back for the lady who had called back first, and never saw her. Never saw anybody, actually, just the nurses that were going to insert the needle and the ultrasound lady. But anyway, as I laid there, I had this peace just wash over me, completely wash over me. And it was almost as if I could feel Jesus holding my hand. And what I'm trying to get at with this is the moment that I feared the most for weeks, because this was scheduled and I had to sit and worry about it for weeks. I didn't have to worry about it, I don't guess, but I did. But the moment that I feared the most, Jesus was in it, all in it. He gave me the peace that passes all understanding in that moment. Not before, not in those weeks that I was worrying about it, because it says that He doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And there's this passage in Scripture that I've read it a million times, but it spoke to me in a different way. And it's in Proverbs 31, and I think it's verse 25, that says, "She will laugh at the days to come." And I read that scripture not long ago, and it made me think about how I should not have feared that moment, because I could just laugh at that day, knowing that when I got there, Jesus was going to be there with me. We're not supposed to fear. We're supposed to trust Him. He does not want us to fear. But if we have to face something that we are scared of, He is going to be there when we have to face it. He's going to be right in the midst of it. in a more tangible way than I would have ever known or even imagined. And I don't know, I just guess that I wanted to share that because I feel like God wanted me to share that. And I will say that when I got done having with the needle, when I got done, I came back out and I asked Aaron, did you see anybody come out here? Anybody? He said nobody came out from the back into the waiting area to leave. So those two ladies that spoke to me never were saw again. And I really believe that it was angels that God sent to speak to me and to comfort me in my fear. And that has really changed the way I face things moving forward. I won't tell you that I don't ever have fear or anxiety at all, but when I do, I think about how I might be afraid of something of the future, but that the Lord doesn't want me to fear my future. He wants me to trust in Him and that He will be there to carry me through it. And I just think back on every single time I have been terrified of something, of a certain thing happening or a day or something that I had to face. When I got to that day, He showered me in complete peace. So I've learned from that to trust that He's going to be there and to try to not fear it so much, because He doesn't want me to fear. He wants me to trust Him. And so I just wanted to share that with you all, because it really is something that changed my life. And I don't know, I just felt like somebody might need to hear it, and I just wanted to share it. So even though I don't do these videos often because they terrify me, but that's part of it. My husband said something today because God's kind of leading him somewhere and he's afraid. And he said, but I'm just going to do it afraid. And when he said that, I thought, I have to make this video even though I'm afraid. Because I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I made it to the end of this video. Yay! So thank you all for watching. I hope that it encouraged somebody to maybe not fear those moments that you're facing quite so much. Know that Jesus is going to be in the midst of it all. Thank you, and y'all have a great day.